So today I wanted to talk about consultative or solution selling. Um, According to Richardson Company, consultative sales or needs-based selling is often referred to as a consultative sales approach in which customer needs are used as the basis for sales dialogue. So in this selling technique, it is critical for sellers because competing in the world of selling today means understanding the changing world of buyers and adjusting your sales approach accordingly to drive meaningful value. So in this sales technique, there's a six-step process of research, ask, listen, teach, qualify, and close, with ultimately the intention of reversing the sales dialogue roles and having the buyer convince the seller that they need to buy the product. So in order to facilitate this process, it requires a very in-depth one-on-one dialogue and relationship between the seller and the buyer. And this is typically more effective for one-time purchases or more expensive purchases that are more technical in nature. Um, so step one, research. So this mostly involves developing that technical skill set that can effectively communicate to the customer what not only the product, but what the salesperson can bring in terms of relational value, in terms of expertise on helping the buyer's business or individual improve. So research can vary from market research to industry research to product research. Is really an essential part of establishing legitimacy in the dialogue. If the customer does not sense that the seller has a strong foundation for what they're talking about, they will be more skeptical of the product and the solution the seller is offering. Second step in the process is to ask. So this means asking lots of questions to the potential buyer, asking them how not only about their business situation but on their outlook, as well as past troubles or future problems that they anticipate. Um, this is a really important part of the process too for establishing a rapport with the seller. And throughout the process, the seller should look to continue to ask questions, not just at the beginning. However, this is an important first step in engaging in dialogue and establishing rapport. Second step is to listen. So once the seller has asked their series of questions, it's important that they listen and meaningfully listen and not just listen in a way as to frame a specific preconceived narrative, but to listen in a way to further establish that dialogue and establish that rapport with the potential buyer. So again, if the buyer does not perceive that the seller is sincere in their listening and is actually attempting uh, to offer a novel and meaningful solution, then they will be more skeptical of what the seller is offering. The fourth step is teach. Now this step is somewhat counterintuitive as the seller does not actually want to teach in a traditional sense. They don't want to be teaching to the buyer. They want to be, again, further establishing that dialogue while also explaining the benefits of the product or service that they have to offer. So in this way, the buyer will be informed as to the quality and the merits of the seller's products, but they also will be further convinced of the value of that product. The fifth step is to qualify. So this goes hand in hand with teaching. This means to qualify the merits of the purchase to the buyer. So again, if the buyer does not perceive a high level of value for the product, then they will be unlikely to buy that product. So techniques that can help in the qualification process are aided by the first four steps. So performing better research and higher quality research will help in the technical expertise of the seller and to provide a more tailored solution. Asking better questions will also help in tailoring the solution to the buyer's specific situation, listening to their problems. So this step is closely intertwined with the previous steps, and as a part of establishing that strong dialogue, this step will be important in driving the ultimate sale of the product. And finally, the close. So this is the ultimate sale of the product. So this will involve closing the deal, assuring the customer that this is the best alternative versus other products, and negotiating the terms of the deal. So typically in a consultative sales process, the product that's offered is a more expensive product that is more of a one-time or a large purchase item. Therefore, negotiating the terms of the sale can be more detailed and more precise. For example, the sale of a large data center for a medium to large business could have multiple terms in terms of pricing, in terms of lock-in, maintenance of that hardware, etc. So these terms will need to be negotiated at the close. But typically, the close of the sale is after the customer's already made the decision to buy the product from the seller. And again, in line with the consultative sales process, if the buyer has made the decision, they've actually made the decision rather than the seller. So the buyer has come to the conclusion they want to buy that product, and they are convincing the seller of their position, and thus trying to argue for their terms of the deal at the close. So this is the consultative sales process. It's an emerging sales process in business to business, but also in the financial sector, for instance, with private wealth management. Anything that involves large purchases and requires a relationship for the sale to close. Thank you for listening.